The ache you feel in the center of your chest is not the whisper of a soulmate, but the roar of a starving ego demanding to be fed. We have been conditioned by 1,000 years of poetry and song to believe that an all-consuming obsession is the highest form of devotion, yet this frantic hunger is rarely about the person standing before us. It is a biological siren song, a neurochemical storm that hijacks the brain's survival circuitry to convince us that our very existence depends on the gaze of another. When you find yourself unable to breathe unless they acknowledge you, you are not experiencing the depth of your heart, but the desperation of a self-concept that has forgotten how to sustain itself. This realization is the first step toward reclaiming the sovereignty of your mind from the phantom grip of a manufactured fantasy. To understand the architecture of this obsession is to begin the process of dismantling the walls that keep you imprisoned in a state of perpetual longing. As you lean into the depths of this exploration with the elevated within, you start to see that true clarity requires looking past the romantic veil and into the machinery of your own identity. We are here to bridge the gap between the agonizing mystery of your feelings and the liberating truth of your psychological makeup. By examining the roots of your attachment, you invite a transformation that transcends mere recovery, moving instead toward a profound and unshakable sense of inner completion. This journey is not about losing the person you desire, but about finding the version of yourself that no longer requires their permission to be whole. The fundamental deception of limerence lies in its ability to masquerade as love while functioning as a potent neurochemical high. While true love is built on the slow, deliberate foundation of intimacy, shared values, and mutual reality, limerence is a flash fire fueled by uncertainty and the projection of impossible ideals. Your brain is currently bathed in a cocktail of dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin, creating a state of hyperarousal that mimics the early stages of addiction. This is not a spiritual connection meant to be followed to the ends of the earth. It is a survival mechanism of an insecure ego that has identified a specific person as the sole provider of its safety and worth. When you distinguish the biology from the narrative, you begin to see that the intensity of your feelings is actually a measure of your own internal agitation rather than the value of the other person. This neurochemical flood serves a specific purpose, acting as a temporary bridge over the cracks in your self-concept. The ego, feeling fragile or insufficient, latches onto the promise of the other person as if they were a life raft in a turbulent sea. Because the brain cannot distinguish between the threat of physical starvation and the threat of social rejection, it triggers a stress response that keeps you locked in a cycle of rumination. You are not thinking about them because they are special. You are thinking about them because your brain believes your survival depends on securing their favor. Once you recognize this as a biological glitch rather than a romantic destiny, the power of the obsession begins to wane under the light of objective truth. The person you are obsessed with is not a human being in your mind, but a mirror reflecting the parts of yourself you have yet to claim. We often fall into the trap of believing we love them for their brilliance, their confidence, or their ease in the world, without realizing these are the very qualities we have buried within our own shadow. This phenomenon, often called the golden shadow, occurs when we project our own latent potential onto a Limerent object because it is too frightening to own that power ourselves. You are not captivated by who they are, but by the version of yourself you think you could become if only you were tethered to them. They have become a walking, breathing canvas for your unfulfilled desires and the strengths you have been taught to suppress. When you look at your crush, you are actually staring at a curated gallery of your own missing pieces. The intensity of your attraction is directly proportional to the distance between your current self-concept and the idealized traits you have assigned to them. If you believe you are unremarkable, you will be pathologically drawn to their perceived charisma. If you feel chaotic, you will crave their supposed stability. This projection creates a dangerous imbalance where you elevate them to the status of a deity while simultaneously diminishing your own stature. By understanding that the light you see in them is actually your own light being reflected back at you, you can begin the work of reclaiming those traits and integrating them into your own identity. The mirror effect is a diagnostic tool that reveals exactly where your self-concept is fractured and where your healing must begin. Every time you find yourself ruminating on a specific quality they possess, You are receiving a direct message from your subconscious about a part of yourself that is crying out for expression. If their perceived independence makes your heart ache, it is a signal that you have sacrificed your own autonomy to please others. If their creative fire seems to burn brighter than yours, it is an invitation to reignite the passions you have let go cold. The obsession is not a call to pursue the person, but a call to pursue the qualities they represent within the sanctuary of your own life. At the heart of every Limerent episode lies a profound sense of lack, a void in the self-concept that demands to be filled by an external source. This void is not a natural state of being, but a wound created by childhood or developmental gaps where the self was not adequately mirrored or validated. If you grew up in an environment where your worth was conditional, or where your emotional needs went unmet, your brain learned to view love as something that must be chased, earned, and maintained through hypervigilance. You are now attempting to use the Limerent object to fill a hole that was dug decades ago, believing that their love will finally prove that you are enough. The brain views this person as the missing piece of a puzzle that has been incomplete since your earliest memories. This fracture in the self-concept creates a narrative of incompleteness, a persistent feeling that you are a half-formed creature waiting for a catalyst to make you whole. You have likely spent years operating under the subconscious belief that your value is something to be granted by another person rather than something that exists inherently within you. When the Limerent object enters your field of vision, they are immediately cast as the savior who will finally heal the old wounds of rejection and invisibility. The brain becomes obsessed with the fantasy of their acceptance because it represents a retroactive fix for every time you were made to feel small or unworthy. However, no amount of external validation can ever truly fill a void that is rooted in a fundamental rejection of the self. Investigating this lack requires a courageous look at the moments in your history where you were taught to outsource your self-worth. It is often found in the silence of a parent who is physically present but emotionally distant, or in the sting of early social exclusions that left you feeling like an outsider looking in. These experiences encoded a message in your nervous system that you are fundamentally lacking something essential that others possess. Limerence is the adult expression of that childhood hunger, a desperate attempt to rewrite the past by winning the favor of someone who feels just as elusive as the love you once craved. Recognizing this pattern allows you to stop seeking the solution in the present and start addressing the origin of the wound. The addiction to validation is the engine that keeps the Limerent cycle spinning, turning the other person into a human drug that you must consume to feel regulated. Every text message, every smile, and every fleeting moment of attention triggers a massive release of dopamine, providing a temporary reprieve from the underlying pain of your low self-concept. You have become a seeker of external proof, constantly scanning the environment for evidence that you are seen, wanted, and valuable. This creates a devastating dependency where your mood, your productivity, and your very sense of self are held hostage by the unpredictable actions of another individual. You are no longer living your life. You are managing a chemical habit that requires a constant supply of reassurance to keep the withdrawal at bay. This addiction thrives on intermittent reinforcement, the psychological phenomenon where rewards are given inconsistently, making the behavior of seeking them nearly impossible to break. When the Limerent object is hot and cold, your brain works overtime to solve the puzzle, believing that if you just try harder or become more perfect, you can secure a permanent flow of validation. The highs are euphoric because they seem to validate your entire existence, while the lows are catastrophic because they feel like a total erasure of your worth. You are caught in a loop where you are constantly trying to earn a status that you should already possess by right of your own humanity. The more you seek this external proof, the more you reinforce the belief that you are incapable of providing it for yourself. Breaking the addiction to validation requires a radical shift in how you view the source of your value. You must begin to see the Limerent object not as a provider of worth, but as a distraction from the task of building a stable internal foundation. Every time you reach out for their approval, you are essentially telling your subconscious that you are not enough on your own. This habit of seeking external confirmation acts as a barrier to true self-acceptance, as it keeps you focused on the perception of others rather than the reality of your own being. The path to freedom lies in recognizing that the dopamine hit of their attention is a poor substitute for the steady, quiet glow of a self-concept that is rooted in personal integrity and self-respect. As you navigate the withdrawal from this human drug, you must prepare to face the raw discomfort of the void without the numbing effect of the obsession. The addiction has served as a shield, protecting you from the terrifying realization that you have been neglecting yourself for far too long. When the fantasy begins to crumble, the old feelings of inadequacy and loneliness will inevitably surface. But these are not signs of failure. They are signs of a system beginning to recalibrate. By refusing to seek the quick fix of their validation, you create the space necessary for a new, more resilient self-concept to emerge. This is the stage where you stop being a passenger in your own mind and start becoming the architect of your own peace. The transition from seeking external validation to cultivating internal worth is the most difficult and rewarding work you will ever do. It requires you to sit with the parts of yourself that you have tried to hide or fix through the love of another, and to finally offer those parts the acceptance they have been craving. You are learning to be the source of your own sunlight, rather than a moon that only shines when it reflects the light of someone else. This shift is not a one-time event, but a daily practice of choosing to value your own perspective over the perceived judgment of the Limerent Object. As you strengthen this muscle, the power of the obsession will naturally diminish, replaced by a sense of autonomy that no one can take away from you. The ultimate goal of this psychological inventory is to dismantle the pedestal upon which you have placed the other person and to stand firmly on your own ground. You are beginning to see that the intense focus you have directed toward them was actually a misdirected search for your own wholeness. By understanding the biology, the mirror effect, the void, and the addiction, you have stripped the obsession of its mystical power and revealed it for what it truly is, a symptom of a self-concept in transition. You are not losing a great love. You are gaining the ability to love yourself with a depth and a clarity that was previously impossible. This is the foundation upon which a truly sovereign life is built, a life where you are the protagonist and the source of your own meaning. In the silence that follows the quieting of the Limerent storm, you will find a version of yourself that is far more interesting and capable than the one who is lost in the fog of obsession. The energy that was once consumed by rumination and longing is now available to be redirected toward your own growth, your own passions, and your own connection to the world. You are no longer a seeker of crumbs, but a creator of your own feast, moving through the world with the quiet confidence of someone who knows they are already enough. The mirror has served its purpose, showing you what was missing, and now you have the tools to integrate those pieces into a unified and powerful whole. This is the end of the search for a savior and the beginning of the reign of the sovereign self. The realization that you are the architect of your own internal landscape brings you to the precipice of a radical transformation, one that requires you to lay down the weapons you have used against your own mind. For too long, the experience of limerence has been compounded by a secondary layer of suffering, a relentless wave of shame that crashes over you every time you find yourself spiraling back into thoughts of the other person. You have likely spent countless hours berating yourself for your perceived weakness, wondering why you cannot simply switch off the longing, or why your intellect seems so powerless against the tide of your emotions. This internal conflict creates a feedback loop where the shame itself becomes a stressor, driving you even deeper into the fantasy as a way to escape the pain of your own self-judgment. To break this cycle, you must apply the principle of radical acceptance to the obsession itself, acknowledging the presence of these thoughts without the need to punish yourself for their existence. Radical acceptance is the courageous act of seeing your current reality exactly as it is, without attempting to ignore, change, or wish it away in this moment. When you find yourself caught in the grip of a limerent intrusive thought, your instinctual reaction is often to fight it, to push it away with a sense of disgust or frantic urgency. However, the psychological law of reversed effort dictates that the more energy you spend resisting a thought, the more power and persistence that thought gains within your consciousness. Instead of engaging in this exhausting tug-of-war, you can learn to simply observe the obsession as a neutral phenomenon, a temporary weather pattern passing through the vast sky of your mind. By saying to yourself that you are currently experiencing an obsession and that it is okay to feel this way. You strip the monster of its teeth and begin to settle into a state of non-reactive presence. This shift in perspective allows you to move from being the victim of your thoughts to being the compassionate witness of your own internal struggle. You are not a failure because your brain is seeking a dopamine hit, nor are you broken because your heart yearns for a connection that remains out of reach. You are simply a human being with a nervous system that is trying, however clumsily, to find safety and significance in a complex world. When you stop fighting the obsession, you create a clearing in the woods where healing can actually begin, because you are no longer wasting your vital energy on self-flagellation. This is the end of the shame cycle, a quiet truce where you accept the messiness of your current state as the necessary starting point for your eventual liberation. As the fog of shame begins to lift, you are granted the clarity to look deeper into the subterranean layers of your personality, into the places where the shadow self resides. This shadow is composed of all the traits, desires, and vulnerabilities that you have deemed unacceptable or shameful throughout your life, often including the parts of you that feel needy, obsessive, or desperately lonely. In the context of limerence, the shadow self is often the one driving the car, seeking out the other person as a way to finally receive the validation that you have denied these hidden parts of yourself. By bringing these aspects into the light of your conscious awareness, you begin the process of integration, which is the only way to reduce the overwhelming power they hold over your behavior. Radical acceptance means looking at your own neediness not with contempt, but with the same tenderness you would offer a frightened child who has lost their way. The parts of you that crave the Limerent object are not your enemies. They are messengers carrying news of your own unmet needs and forgotten strengths. When you judge these parts as weak or pathetic, you force them further into the darkness, where they are free to operate outside of your control and manifest as the very obsessions you find so distressing. If you can learn to sit with your inner child, acknowledging their hunger for love and their fear of being invisible, you start to build an internal relationship that is far more stable than any external connection could ever be. You are learning to be the parent and the protector that your shadow self has been searching for in the person of the Limerent object. This integration transforms the energy of the obsession into the energy of self-compassion, turning a source of agony into a wellspring of personal insight. Meeting the shadow requires a willingness to be honest about the depths of your longing, without allowing that longing to define your entire identity. You may find that the intensity of your obsession is actually a reflection of how much of yourself you have suppressed in your pursuit of a perfected, invulnerable image. By accepting the obsessive parts of your personality, you give them permission to exist without needing to act out through the medium of another person. This reduces the pressure on the Limerent object to be the one who saves you from your own darkness, as you are finally taking responsibility for the entirety of your internal world. You are beginning to see that wholeness does not mean the absence of need, but the presence of a self-concept that is large enough to hold both your strengths and your deepest vulnerabilities. This inward journey of acceptance must eventually extend outward, into the tangible reality of your daily existence, leading to what can be described as the as-is inventory. Limerence thrives in the gap between the life you have and the life you imagine you would have if only the other person loved you back. You have likely spent months or even years viewing your current circumstances through a filter of lack, seeing your body, your career, and your social status as insufficient because they have not yet secured the prize of the other person's devotion. The as-is inventory is a practical exercise in stripping away the if-only narrative and confronting the reality of your life with unblinking honesty and radical presence. It is the process of looking at your reflection, your bank account, and your living space and deciding that these things are enough, not because they are perfect, but because they are yours. When you live in the if-only filter, you are essentially putting your entire life on hold, waiting for an external catalyst to give you permission to be happy or satisfied. You tell yourself that you will start that new project, take care of your health, or invest in your friendships only after the Limerent object validates your worth. This creates a state of perpetual suspension where your current life feels like a waiting room rather than a destination. Radical acceptance demands that you stop waiting and start inhabiting the life you actually have, with all its flaws, limitations, and quiet beauties. By accepting your body as it is today, rather than how you think it should look to attract their gaze, you reclaim your physical form as a vessel for your own experience rather than an object for their appraisal. This inventory is not about settling for less, but about grounding yourself in the truth so that you can build something genuine from the floor up. When you stop obsessing over the status you think you lack, you free up the mental space to actually improve your circumstances for your own benefit. You begin to see that your value is not a fluctuating currency that rises and falls with the attention of another, but a fixed asset that remains constant regardless of your relationship status. The as-is inventory allows you to fall in love with the mundane reality of your own existence, finding a strange and beautiful peace in the simple fact of being alive. This grounding in the present moment is the ultimate antidote to the airy, unstable fantasies of limerence, providing a solid foundation upon which a new self-concept can be constructed. As you become more grounded in your reality, you will inevitably encounter the physical and emotional sensations of the Limerent agony, the raw withdrawal that occurs when the fantasy begins to dissolve. This pain is not merely a mental construct. It is a physiological event, a neurochemical crash that can feel like a crushing weight in your chest or a hollow ache in your stomach. Most people respond to this agony by immediately reaching for the drug of fantasy, conjuring up scenarios of reconciliation, or scanning social media for a sign of the other person's life. However, true healing requires a process of emotional alchemy, where you learn to sit with this discomfort using mindfulness and radical presence rather than escaping into the mental fog of the obsession. You are learning to stay in your body, even when that body feels like a house on fire. Emotional alchemy is the art of transforming the leaden weight of pain into the gold of self-awareness by refusing to turn away from the intensity of your feelings. When the withdrawal symptoms hit, instead of trying to think your way out of them, you can choose to drop your attention into the physical sensations themselves. You might notice the tightness in your throat, the heat in your face, or the fluttering in your heart, observing these sensations with a curious and non-judgmental stance. By staying present with the agony, you prove to your nervous system that these feelings are not life-threatening and that you have the capacity to endure them without the need for an external rescue. This process of sitting with the fire eventually burns away the dependencies of the old self-concept, leaving behind a version of you that is tempered and resilient. This practice of radical presence allows the Limerent energy to move through you rather than becoming stuck in a loop of rumination. Pain is often just energy that has nowhere to go, and by giving it your full, undistracted attention, you provide it with the channel it needs to dissipate. You will find that the peaks of agony, while intense, are actually quite brief when they are not fueled by the stories you tell yourself about what the pain means. The more you practice this emotional alchemy, the more you realize that you are the container for the pain, not the pain itself. You are the vast, unshakable ocean, and the Limerent agony is merely a wave that rises and falls on your surface, unable to disturb the depths of your being. This journey through acceptance, shadow work, and emotional alchemy is not a linear path, but a spiral that brings you deeper into the core of your own sovereignty with every rotation. You are dismantling the old, fragile self-concept that relied on the reflection of another to feel visible, and you are replacing it with a foundation that is rooted in the reality of your own existence. Every time you choose to accept the obsession without shame, every time you embrace your shadow, and every time you sit with your pain, you are casting a vote for a new version of yourself. This is the work of becoming a person who is no longer a hostage to their own desires, but a conscious master of their own internal world. The transition from the agony of lack to the peace of presence is the most profound shift a human being can experience. As you continue to refine this practice, you will notice that the gravity of the Limerent object begins to lose its pull, as you are no longer projecting your missing pieces onto their form. You are becoming your own source of light, your own mirror, and your own sanctuary, which makes the need for external validation seem increasingly redundant. The world around you begins to change as your internal state shifts, as people and opportunities are drawn to the quiet strength of someone who is truly comfortable in their own skin. You are no longer searching for a savior because you have discovered that the power to save yourself has been within you all along, hidden under the layers of shame and projection. This is the quiet dawn of a new identity, one that is built on the unshakable ground of radical self-acceptance. The energy that was once bound up in the frantic pursuit of another is now being reclaimed and channeled into the construction of a life that actually belongs to you. You are beginning to move with a different kind of grace, the grace of someone who has walked through the fire and come out the other side with their soul intact. The silence that once felt like loneliness is now beginning to feel like freedom, a vast and open space where anything is possible. You are no longer defined by who loves you or who leaves you, but by the quality of your own presence and the depth of your own self-respect. This is the stage where the obsession is finally revealed to be the catalyst for your own awakening, a difficult but necessary teacher on the path to total autonomy. The process of reclaiming your identity is not about erasing the past, but about integrating it into a narrative where you are the hero rather than the victim. You can look back on the intensity of your limerence not with regret, but with a sense of awe at the capacity of your own heart to feel so deeply, even if that feeling was misdirected. This capacity for intensity is a gift, and once it is decoupled from the obsession, it can be used to fuel your creativity, your purpose, and your genuine connections with others. You are learning to harness the storm rather than being swept away by it, turning the raw power of your emotions into a force for your own evolution. The self you are becoming is far more complex and beautiful than the one you were trying to protect through the fantasy. As you settle into this new way of being, you realize that the goal was never to get the person, but to become the person who no longer needs them to feel whole. This realization is the ultimate liberation, as it places the keys to your happiness firmly back in your own hands. You are moving through the world with a sense of quiet authority, no longer scanning the horizon for a sign of approval, but looking within for the steady glow of your own integrity. The architecture of your obsession has been dismantled, and in its place, you have built a temple to your own sovereign self. This is the foundation from which you will launch the next chapter of your life, a chapter written in the language of clarity, strength, and an unbreakable commitment to your own truth. The shifts occurring within your nervous system are profound, as the old pathways of addiction are slowly replaced by the new pathways of self-regulation and peace. You are teaching your brain that it is safe to be alone, that it is safe to be seen as you are, and that your worth is an inherent quality of your existence. This rewiring takes time and patience, but the rewards are a sense of internal stability that no external event can take away from you. You are becoming a person who is anchored in the present, a person who can face the uncertainty of the future with a calm and open heart. The phantom grip of the manufactured fantasy has lost its hold, replaced by the warm and solid reality of your own becoming. Every moment of radical acceptance is a brick in the wall of your new self-concept, a wall that does not shut the world out, but defines the boundaries of your own sacred space. You are learning to protect this space with a fierce and tender love, ensuring that no one is ever again given the power to determine your value. The journey of overcoming limerence is, at its heart, a journey toward the most intimate relationship you will ever have, the relationship with yourself. As this bond strengthens, the need for the Limerent object naturally fades into the background, becoming a distant memory of a time when you didn't yet know your own strength. You are standing in the center of your own life, fully present, fully accepted, and finally, truly free. The silence of the mind that follows the end of a Limerent episode is not a void, but a fertile field waiting for the seeds of your true purpose. You are now in a position to choose your path with a clarity that was impossible when you were blinded by the light of the obsession. This newfound autonomy is the most precious gift you can give yourself, a sovereignty that allows you to engage with the world on your own terms. You are no longer a satellite orbiting another's sun, but a star in your own right, radiating a light that is fueled by the depth of your own self-acceptance. The reign of the sovereign self is not a destination, but a continuous practice of choosing yourself, over and over again, in every thought and every action. The first strike against the fortress of obsession is the intentional act of humanization. You have spent months, perhaps years, filtering their every action through a lens of perfection, turning their mundane traits into signs of divine grace. To dismantle the pedestal is to reclaim your sight and see the individual as they truly are, stripped of the celestial light you have cast upon them. They are not a grand solution to your internal turbulence, but a person with their own fears, their own bad habits, and their own capacity for profound selfishness. By acknowledging their fallibility, you allow them to step down from the impossible height of a deity and return to the shared ground of human struggle. When you hold someone on a pedestal, you are not loving a person, you are worshiping a symbol of your own salvation. This symbolic weight is a burden they were never meant to carry, and it is a lie that keeps you in a state of perpetual inferiority. Humanization requires you to look for the cracks in the porcelain, the moments of clumsiness, and the inherent limitations of their character. You must realize that their approval cannot heal you because they are just as lost and searching as anyone else. This shift in perspective is not about bitterness or devaluing them, but about the radical honesty of seeing another human being in their totality rather than their highlight reel. The brain in a state of limerence is a master of the halo effect, a cognitive bias where one positive trait is used to paint an entire personality with the brush of perfection. If they are charismatic, you assume they are also kind. If they are intelligent, you assume they are emotionally stable. You must consciously challenge these assumptions by looking for the evidence of their humanity that you have previously ignored or excused. This might mean remembering the times they were insensitive, the ways they fail to communicate, or the simple fact that they are not responsible for your emotional well-being. Once the halo is removed, the person remains, but the idol vanishes, leaving you with the clarity to decide if the reality of them is actually what you need. This process of deconstruction is the necessary precursor to rebuilding your own self-concept. As long as you believe they possess a magical quality that you lack, you will remain a beggar at the gates of their attention. By seeing that they are made of the same fragile, complicated material as you, the power dynamic begins to level out. You are no longer looking up from a position of lack, but looking across from a position of equal humanity. This realization allows the intense, gravity-defying pull of the obsession to weaken, as you find that there is no God in that temple, only a person who is incapable of filling the void you have carried for so long. As the image of the other person begins to settle into a more realistic form, your attention must turn inward to the architecture of the stories you tell yourself. The identity you have inhabited during this obsession is likely built on a foundation of perceived inadequacy, a narrative where you are the character who is fundamentally unwanted or incomplete. This story is not a reflection of reality, but a curated collection of your greatest fears and oldest wounds. To rebuild the self-concept, you must become the conscious editor of your internal dialogue, systematically replacing the narrative of lack with a narrative of inherent value. You are shifting from the role of a passive observer of your pain to the active architect of your own worth. Cognitive reframing is the tool you will use to dismantle the old scripts and write a new operating system for your mind. When the thought arises that you are unworthy because they do not choose you, you must pause and recognize this as a relic of an outdated identity. The new narrative does not seek proof of value from the outside world. It asserts that your value is a fixed constant, independent of any external validation. You are not unwanted. You are simply in a state of transition, learning to provide for yourself the very things you once sought from a stranger. This reframing turns a perceived rejection into a powerful redirection toward the only person who can truly grant you the sense of belonging you crave. The role of identity in limerence cannot be overstated, as the obsession often serves as a temporary substitute for a clear sense of self. When you don't know who you are, it is easy to become who they want you to be, or who you think they would love. Curating a new narrative means reclaiming the territory of your own soul and deciding which traits and values will define you moving forward. You are no longer the one who waits for a text. You are the one who values their time and energy too much to spend it on those who do not reciprocate. This is not an overnight transformation, but a daily practice of choosing the story that empowers you over the story that diminishes you. Every time you catch yourself slipping back into the old narrative, you have an opportunity to reinforce the new one. You must treat these moments not as failures, but as repetitions in the gym of your own consciousness. By consistently asserting that you are the source of your own value, you begin to rewire the neural pathways that once led straight to the obsession. The more you live from this new story, the more the old one begins to feel like a distant, faded memory of someone you used to be. You are becoming the protagonist of a life that is defined by your own internal integrity rather than the shifting whims of a Limerent object. This leads us to the profound realization that the traits you have most admired in the other person are actually the hidden gems of your own character. This phenomenon of projection occurs when we are unable to own our own brilliance, so we assign it to someone else and then chase them to stay close to the light. If you're captivated by their confidence, their creativity, or their ease in the world, it is because those very qualities are crying out for expression within you. You are not in love with who they are. You are in love with the version of yourself that you see reflected in them. Integration is the process of reclaiming these projected traits and weaving them back into the fabric of your own self-concept. To begin this integration, you must look at the list of qualities you have used to justify your obsession and ask where they currently exist in your own life, however small. If you admire their strength, look for the moments where you have been resilient in the face of your own struggles. If you are drawn to their intelligence, acknowledge the unique insights and wisdom you bring to your own experiences. The step-by-step guide to reclaiming these traits involves first identifying the projection, then finding the seed of that quality within yourself, and finally taking deliberate action to nourish that seed. You must stop being a fan of their virtues and start being the practitioner of your own. The more you embody the traits you once projected, the less you will feel the need to be tethered to the other person. You are essentially cutting the energetic cords that kept you dependent on them for a sense of wholeness. When you build your own confidence, their confidence no longer feels like a missing piece of your puzzle. It simply becomes a trait that another person possesses. This integration creates a sense of internal density and presence that makes the airy fantasies of limerence lose their appeal. You are becoming a person who is whole in their own right, a person who contains all the colors of the spectrum within their own being. This work of integration is the ultimate act of self-respect, as it honors the complexity and potential of your own soul. You are no longer content to live in the shadow of another, serving as a supporting character in their story while your own life remains unlived. By claiming your projected traits, you are stepping into the fullness of your power and taking responsibility for your own greatness. This shift in energy is palpable as you move through the world with the quiet authority of someone who knows they have everything they need within themselves. You are no longer looking for a savior, because you have realized that the savior you were looking for was always you. As your self-concept strengthens, the need for clear and unshakable boundaries becomes the primary expression of your newfound self-respect. For a long time, the idea of no contact may have felt like a punishment or a desperate tactical move to gain their attention. You must now shift your understanding of no contact to see it as a sacred gift you are giving to your healing self. It is the creation of a sanctuary, a protected environment where your new identity can take root and grow without being constantly buffeted by the winds of old triggers. Boundaries are not walls designed to keep people out, but gates that you control to keep your internal peace in. Protecting your new self-concept requires a ruthless honesty about what you can and cannot handle during this period of recalibration. Every time you check their social media, every time you reread old messages, and every time you put yourself in their physical orbit, you are inviting the old identity back into the driver's seat. No contact is the act of saying that your mental health and your future are more important than the temporary dopamine hit of their presence. It is a declaration of sovereignty, a statement that you are no longer willing to be a hostage to the neurochemical storm that their image triggers within you. By maintaining this space, you allow your nervous system to finally settle into a state of safety and regulation. This boundary is not just about physical distance, but about the energetic and mental space you occupy. You are learning to set boundaries with your own thoughts, gently but firmly redirecting your attention whenever it wanders back to the obsession. This internal discipline is the highest form of self-love, as it prevents you from falling back into the cycles of rumination that once defined your existence. You are creating a life that is no longer reactive to the actions of another, but proactive in the pursuit of your own well-being. The gift of no contact is the gift of time, clarity, and the opportunity to finally meet yourself without the distortion of the Limerent lens. As you hold these boundaries, you will notice a growing sense of strength and autonomy that was previously unimaginable. You are proving to yourself, day by day, that you are capable of choosing your own peace over the chaos of the obsession. This consistency builds a deep sense of trust within yourself, a confidence that you can protect your own heart and mind from the things that seek to diminish them. You are no longer a victim of your impulses, but a conscious guardian of your own internal landscape. This is the foundation upon which a truly sovereign life is built, a life where your boundaries are the architecture of your freedom. The transition from viewing boundaries as a loss to viewing them as a gain is a pivotal moment in your recovery. You are not losing a connection, you are gaining a self. You are not missing out on their life, you are finally showing up for your own. Every moment of silence from them is a moment of space for you to hear your own voice, to discover your own desires, and to build a life that is truly yours. This silence is not empty, it is full of the potential of the person you are becoming. By respecting the boundary of no contact, you are making a profound investment in the version of you that is no longer defined by longing. The old self-concept was built on the shaky ground of external approval, but this new self-concept is being forged in the fire of self-reliance and radical acceptance. You are learning that you can survive the discomfort of longing without needing to act on it, and that your value remains intact even in the absence of their gaze. This resilience is the true goal of the journey, a state of being where you are so anchored in your own worth that the actions of others can no longer knock you off balance. You are becoming unshakable, not because you have stopped feeling, but because you have started trusting yourself to handle whatever you feel. The boundaries you set today are the pillars of the temple you are building for your own sovereign soul. In this space of protected growth, the energy that was once consumed by the obsession begins to transmute into something far more productive and beautiful. You find yourself with a surplus of mental and emotional resources that can now be directed toward your own passions, your own goals, and your own creative expressions. The focus that was once laser-pointed at the Limerent Object is now broadening to encompass the entire horizon of your life. You are no longer a satellite, but a sun, radiating an energy that is self-generated and self-sustaining. This is the natural result of reclaiming your projected traits and enforcing the boundaries that protect your peace. The rewiring of your identity is a profound act of rebellion against the scripts that told you that you were not enough on your own. You are dismantling the cultural myths of the other half and the soulmate, and replacing them with the truth of your own inherent wholeness. This is the most important work you will ever do, as it changes not just how you relate to one person, but how you relate to the entire world. When you are no longer seeking a savior, you are free to engage with others from a place of genuine connection and mutual respect. You are moving from a state of hunger to a state of abundance, from a state of dependency to a state of total autonomy. As you look back at the person you were at the height of the obsession, you can do so with compassion rather than shame. That person was simply doing their best to survive in a world that hadn't yet taught them how to value themselves. You can honor the intensity of their feelings while recognizing that those feelings were a signal of a deeper need for self-love. The journey of overcoming limerence is not about erasing that part of your history, but about integrating it into a narrative of growth and transformation. You are the hero of this story, and the obsession was the trial that forced you to discover your own hidden strength. The silence that once felt like a desert is now beginning to feel like a garden, a place where you can plant the seeds of the life you actually want to live. You are no longer waiting for permission to be happy, to be successful, or to be loved. You are granting that permission to yourself every single day. The architecture of your self-concept is now solid, resilient, and beautiful, built on the reality of your own being rather than the fantasy of another. You are standing in the center of your own life, fully present and fully sovereign, ready to face the world with an open heart and an unshakable mind. The neurochemical storm has passed, and in its wake, you have found a clarity that is more precious than any fleeting high. You understand the machinery of your own mind, the patterns of your own heart, and the source of your own power. This knowledge is your shield and your compass, guiding you toward a future that is defined by your own values and your own vision. You are no longer a seeker of validation, but a creator of meaning, weaving the threads of your experience into a tapestry that is uniquely yours. The reign of the sovereign self has begun, and the world is waiting to see what you will build from this place of total autonomy. Every step you take from here is a step toward a deeper integration of your true self, a self that is no longer fragmented by projection or diminished by lack. You are learning to live in the as-is reality of your life with a sense of gratitude and purpose that was impossible when you were lost in the fog of limerence. The mundane details of your daily existence are now infused with the light of your own presence, as you find joy in the simple act of being yourself. You are no longer performing for an audience of one, you are living for the sake of the life itself. This is the ultimate freedom, the freedom to be who you are without apology or the need for external rescue. The process of rebuilding the self-concept is a continuous unfolding, a journey that does not end but deepens with every choice you make. You are committed to the practice of radical self-acceptance, knowing that even your flaws and your setbacks are part of the beautiful complexity of your humanity. You are no longer afraid of the void, because you have learned how to fill it with your own light. You are no longer afraid of the silence, because you have learned to listen to the wisdom of your own soul. The obsession was the catalyst, but the transformation is yours to keep, a permanent shift in the gravity of your being. As you settle into this new way of existing, you realize that the goal was never to get over the person, but to grow into the version of yourself that no longer needs them. The person you were obsessed with has become a character in a story you have already finished reading, while you have moved on to write the next chapter of your own grand adventure. You are the author, the protagonist, and the sovereign of your own destiny, and the power to create a life of meaning and joy is firmly in your hands. This is the quiet dawn of your new identity, a dawn that will never fade as long as you remain committed to the truth of your own worth. The energy you once spent on rumination is now a fuel for your evolution, a potent force that you can direct toward whatever inspires you. You are discovering new talents, new interests, and new ways of connecting with the world that are not filtered through the lens of another's approval. Your life is becoming richer, deeper, and more vibrant as you reclaim the pieces of yourself that you once gave away. You are no longer a passenger in your own mind, but the navigator of your own soul, charting a course toward a horizon that is as vast and limitless as your own potential. This state of sovereignty is not an absence of connection, but the foundation for healthy, conscious relationships in the future. Because you are whole within yourself, you will no longer seek out partners to fill a void or to mirror your missing pieces. You will be drawn to those who are also whole, creating connections that are based on shared values and mutual respect rather than dependency and lack. Your self-concept is now the filter through which you view the world, ensuring that you only invite in those who honor and reflect the value you have found within yourself. You are no longer settling for crumbs because you know how to provide the feast. The journey of rewiring the identity is the ultimate act of self-reclamation, a return to the essence of who you are before the world told you who you should be. You have stripped away the layers of shame, the masks of perfection, and the dependencies of the ego to find the unshakable truth of your own existence. This truth is your anchor, your sanctuary, and your greatest strength, a light that will guide you through any storm that may come. You are the sovereign self, and your reign is just beginning, a reign defined by clarity, courage, and the radical acceptance of your own magnificent humanity. The energy that once fueled your obsession is a potent, high-octane resource that has been misdirected for far too long. This intensity, this capacity for singular focus and relentless drive, is not a defect of your character, but a powerhouse of potential waiting to be harnessed. When you stop pouring this vital force into the bottomless well of another person, you are left with a massive reservoir of creative and professional power. This is the moment of transmutation, where the very fire that threatened to consume you becomes the engine for your most ambitious goals. You are no longer wasting your cognitive bandwidth on hypothetical conversations or digital surveillance. You are investing it into the architecture of a life that actually belongs to you. Redirecting Limerent energy requires a conscious decision to treat your personal growth with the same urgency you once applied to your obsession. Consider the sheer volume of hours you spent ruminating on a single glance or a cryptic message, and imagine that same focus applied to mastering a craft or building a legacy. This is not about distracting yourself with busy work, but about recognizing that your capacity for obsession is actually a capacity for excellence. When you apply this redirected drive to your professional life or creative passions, you begin to see results that were previously impossible. You are essentially taking the neurochemical engine of a fanatic and putting it into the chassis of a visionary. This rebirth of purpose is the natural consequence of a self-concept that no longer needs to outsource its significance. As you achieve milestones and see the tangible fruits of your labor, your internal narrative shifts from one of lack to one of capability. You begin to take pride in your own autonomy, finding a deep and resonant satisfaction in the work of your own hands. The world starts to respond to this new frequency, as your competence and clarity draw in opportunities that were once invisible to you. You are no longer a beggar at the gates of another's attention. You are the sovereign ruler of your own creative kingdom. As your internal foundation stabilizes, you will find that the very nature of your attractions begins to undergo a fundamental shift. In the past, your type was likely dictated by the specific flavor of your own insecurity, drawing you toward individuals who provided the intermittent reinforcement your starving ego craved. You were attracted to the elusive, the unavailable, and the mysterious because they mirrored the fractured parts of your own self-concept. When you move into a state of secure attachment with yourself, the high-low cycle of the addict begins to lose its appeal. You are no longer looking for a roller coaster. You are looking for a sanctuary where your wholeness is respected and mirrored. Developing conscious relationships means choosing partners based on shared values and mutual reality rather than the projection of missing pieces. A healthy self-concept acts as a sophisticated filter, screening out those who would thrive on your dependency or trigger your old patterns of hypervigilance. You find yourself increasingly drawn to stability, transparency, and consistent warmth, qualities that your Limerent self might have once dismissed as boring. This shift is a sign of profound psychological health, indicating that you no longer require drama to feel alive. You are learning to value the quiet, steady glow of a secure connection over the erratic, blinding flash of an obsession. This transition into secure attachment is not just about who you choose, but how you show up in the space between you and another. Because you are no longer using the relationship to validate your existence, you can afford to be honest, vulnerable, and present. You are not performing a role to win a prize. You are sharing your life with another whole individual. This creates a dynamic of freedom rather than one of entrapment, where both parties are encouraged to grow and evolve independently. Your relationships become a partnership of equals, a collaborative dance rather than a desperate struggle for survival. Even as you thrive in this new sovereignty, you must remain vigilant and aware of the old pathways that still exist within your mind. The ego is a creature of habit, and in moments of stress, loneliness, or fatigue, it may attempt to resurrect the old patterns of limerence as a familiar escape. This is where the ego check becomes an essential tool in your daily practice of radical self-acceptance. You must learn to recognize the subtle signs of a new episode before it gains momentum, identifying the specific triggers that make the fantasy world seem more appealing than reality. By catching the spark early, you prevent the fire from ever taking hold of your consciousness again. An ego check is not an act of self-judgment, but a moment of radical honesty where you ask yourself what unmet need is currently driving your thoughts. If you find yourself lingering on a profile or replaying a compliment, you must pause and address the internal void that is seeking an external fix. Perhaps you are feeling undervalued at work, or perhaps the silence of your own company has become uncomfortable once more. By identifying the root cause of the itch, you can provide yourself with the necessary care without needing to scratch it through the medium of another person. You are learning to be your own first responder, attending to your emotional wounds before they turn into obsessions. If you do experience a setback or find yourself slipping back into old habits, radical acceptance is the only way to navigate the situation without falling into a hole of shame. Shame is the fuel that keeps the cycle spinning, convincing you that you are broken and therefore destined to repeat your mistakes. Instead of berating yourself for a moment of weakness, you must accept the slip-up as a neutral data point in your ongoing evolution. You acknowledge the feeling, understand its origin, and then gently return your focus to the present moment and your sovereign goals. This resilience is the true mark of mastery, as it proves that you are no longer defined by your impulses, but by your commitment to your own truth. Living as the sovereign self is a continuous, daily application of the principles you have painstakingly integrated into your identity. It manifests in the way you wake up and decide that your own approval is the only metric that matters for the day ahead. You move through your professional environment with a sense of quiet authority, no longer seeking the nod of a superior or the admiration of a colleague to feel that your work has value. Your boundaries are not rigid walls of defense, but the natural outlines of a self that knows its own worth and refuses to be compromised. You are finally inhabiting the space you were always meant to occupy, standing tall in the center of your own existence. In your personal life, this sovereignty shows up as a deep and abiding comfort with your own company, a state of being where silence is a luxury rather than a threat. You no longer feel the need to fill every gap in your schedule with digital noise or social validation, as you have become a source of your own entertainment and peace. When you do choose to engage with others, it is from a place of abundance, offering your presence as a gift rather than a transaction. You are the architect of your own joy, curating a life that is rich with meaning, whether or not there is a romantic lead in the cast. This is the ultimate freedom, the liberation from the belief that someone else holds the key to your happiness. The long-term application of radical self-acceptance means embracing the mundane reality of your life with the same intensity you once reserved for the fantasy. You find a strange and beautiful satisfaction in the simple acts of self-care, in the maintenance of your home, and in the pursuit of your health. These are no longer chores performed to make yourself more attractive to a Limerent object. They are rituals of respect for the vessel that carries your soul. You are falling in love with the process of living, finding that the as-is reality of your world is far more interesting and rewarding than any manufactured dream could ever be. You have traded the shimmering mirage for the solid, fertile ground of the present. As you move through the world with this unshakable sense of inner completion, you will notice that the people around you begin to treat you differently. There is a gravity to a person who is truly at home in themselves, an attractive force that is rooted in strength rather than neediness. You draw in people who are inspired by your autonomy and who respect your boundaries, creating a social circle that reinforces your new self-concept. You are no longer a satellite orbiting someone else's sun. You have become a star in your own right, radiating a light that is self-generated and steady. This is the natural order of things when the ego is no longer in the driver's seat. The goal of this entire journey was never to win the heart of the person you desired, but to reclaim the heart you had abandoned in the process. You have discovered that the intensity of your longing was actually a call to adventure, an invitation to explore the depths of your own potential. The obsession was the friction required to forge a new and more resilient identity, one that is capable of navigating the complexities of the human experience with grace and clarity. You can look back on your Limerent self with a sense of profound gratitude, recognizing that the agony of the past was the labor pain of your own rebirth. You are now the person you were waiting for, the savior you were seeking in the eyes of a stranger. Your daily life is now characterized by a sense of flow, a state where your actions are aligned with your values and your mind is free from the clutter of rumination. You approach challenges with a calm and curious spirit, knowing that your worth is not on the line and that you have the internal resources to handle whatever arises. The fear of rejection has lost its power over you, as you have already accepted yourself so radically that no external judgment can truly touch you. You are living with an open heart and a clear mind, fully engaged in the work of being yourself. This is the essence of sovereignty, a state of being that is both powerful and peaceful. As you continue to walk this path, you will find that the memory of the Limerent object fades into a distant and neutral part of your history. They are no longer a ghost haunting your thoughts or a benchmark against which you measure your success. They are simply a person you once knew, a catalyst for a transformation that has now taken on a life of its own. You have successfully decoupled your neurochemistry from their image, returning your brain to a state of balance and your heart to a state of freedom. The architecture of the obsession has been completely dismantled, and in its place, you have built a life of integrity, purpose, and unshakable self-respect. The final summary of this transformation is found in the quiet moments of your day when you realize that you are truly, fundamentally whole. You do not need a partner to complete you, a crush to excite you, or a stranger to validate you. You are the source of your own light, the master of your own mind, and the sovereign of your own soul. This autonomy is the highest form of human achievement, a state of grace that allows you to experience the beauty of the world without being destroyed by its tragedies. You have mastered the art of radical self-acceptance, and in doing so, you have unlocked the door to a life of infinite possibility. This journey of integration and transmutation is the ultimate expression of the elevated within, a testament to the power of the human spirit to transcend its own limitations. You have moved from the depths of obsession to the heights of sovereignty, proving that the most difficult challenges are often the gateways to the most profound growth. As you stand in the fullness of your new identity, remember that this strength is now a permanent part of who you are. You have rewritten your story, reclaimed your power, and stepped into the reign of the sovereign self, where you are finally and forever enough. To continue deepening this mastery and anchoring your new self-concept, subscribe now and join the collective of those rising into their highest autonomy.